Hello and welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our panel of experts to talk with you about setting the stage for a successful job search. Before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life science, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Rich from our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And if you have any questions relevant to today's topic, please drop them in there as well. And we'll try to answer as many of those questions as we can. Before we get started, I'd like to have our panel of experts introduce themselves. Our panel will also be sharing their hot jobs, which you can find at the bottom of the screen or by scanning the QR code. To view all other available jobs, please visit jobs.system1.com. And Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. My name is Danielle. I'm the financial recruitment lead here in Houston, Texas, with the System One branch located on the west side of town. I have been with System One 4 years as of this coming Monday, and I'm excited to be joining live today. The hot job that we are highlighting this afternoon is a accounts payable specialist. This is with a client on the north side of town who is a manufacturing organization. They are looking for someone who specializes in AP, but ideally has dabbled in AR as well, someone who can kind of do both sides of accounting as needed. They are ideally looking for someone who's worked with SAP and Excel. This is an on-site position reporting in office Monday through Friday and is offering up to $29 an hour depending on experience.
Hi, my name is Andrea Mantia. I'm a project coordinator at ALTA IT Services. I'm a team member of our operations team. I assist on various projects, including recruiting for internal positions, managing proposals, event planning, assisting in our training program. And my hot job for today is an AWS DevOps engineer with an active TS clearance. It's on site in Chantilly, Virginia. It's a direct hire. Responsibilities would include taking charge of deploying microservices using a secure deployment pipeline within a Linux environment and troubleshooting Docker containers. If by any chance you have experience or prefer Azure, we do have another DevOps engineer position in Vienna, Virginia. So if you're interested, please feel free to send me a message or apply for the position.
Thank you both. And again, you can view all other jobs at jobs.system1.com or by scanning the QR code. And without further ado, let's get started with our topic. Again, we're going to be discussing setting the stage for a successful job search. So whether you're working with a staffing company or whether you're working on your own, these tips will be very helpful for you. And again, feel free to shoot us any relevant questions you may have. The first question is, what advice do you have for job seekers looking to update their resumes? Andrea, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's very important to know and understand how we operate in finding candidates. We're reviewing resumes from those that applied to the job posting. We're also looking through a vast pool of candidates in our application tracking system. It's a database of individuals that applied to previous job postings. And we're scanning through job boards, exploring LinkedIn profiles. So the way that we look for these individuals is through our search engine, creating search strings, keywords, applying filters. So I think a great way to stand out is reviewing some job postings and compilating buzzwords, keywords that you see in those job postings and implementing them into your resume. I think there was a study, like an eye tracking study back in 2018, and they ended up determining that recruiters actually spend on average like 7.4 seconds reviewing a resume before deciding whether they want to move forward with a candidate. So they also determined what would do great, like best performing resumes and worst performing resumes. They found out that keyword stuffing was something that was worst performing resumes, that they found in worst performing resumes. So even if you're using keywords, do it strategically. Don't stuff your resume with too many words or buzzwords, because at the end of the day, a recruiter is going to be reading the bullet points and determining on whether it makes sense.
Yeah, and specifically thinking about buzzwords, one of the things to think through as you're developing your resume is highlight your technical skill set. So any software that you've worked with, even if you've touched it for a contract role and it's minimal experience, any type of familiarity with the skill set deserves to be mentioned. That is a part of what we utilize in those search engines. A couple of other things that come to mind when utilizing your resume in the job boards. Jobs might be posted in multiple places. I personally don't mind seeing your resume multiple times. I may get to you on Indeed faster than I can see your resume through our ATS. So keep that in mind. It's tedious. Job hunting can be time consuming, but ultimately it's worth your time. And then lastly, getting another set of eyes on your resume. We know what we've done. We're writing down what we've done. But having someone else fine tune and read through and make sure it makes sense is really going to set you apart when recruiters and hiring managers are looking at your resume.
Absolutely. Those are good points. And I think utilizing a recruiter is so helpful because you can still use that advice that the recruiter gives you, whether or not you are actively seeking that job or whether or not you get the position. Thank you both. How should job seekers present themselves online, and how can they optimize their online presence? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a really important topic, as most things are online these days. When thinking about this question, personal brand comes to mind. So everything that you do online is a representation of who you are and who the public is going to how they're going to recognize you. And so thinking of yourself as a brand, I think really helps you be intentional with what you're putting out there. I personally dabble online minimally on social networks, but I know when you're on the market, you either want to set those social profiles to private, or if specifically on some type of professional network, making sure that what you're posting is a reflection of who you will be in the workplace. Keeping professionalism in mind is going to help make sure that the image you're creating to hiring managers, recruiters, is exactly how you want it to be, versus, giving them the opportunity to form an idea that isn't necessarily representative of your work and who you want to be in your next career.
Yeah, I agree with that. Creating and cultivating your personal brand is crucial. When I'm recruiting for individuals, I'm not just looking for individuals that are currently in the market, but individuals that are passively looking. Those tend to be individuals with the best talent. So it's such a great practice just to keep everything up to date. And you never know when someone would like to reach out to you and ask you some questions and ask you if you're interested in an opportunity. And by that time, you're already ready to submit. If you are generating your personal brand online, I've noticed a lot of individuals in the IT field are using GitHub, Reddit, Stack Overflow, and Canva. I would, it ultimately depends on your line of work or career choice about what type of platform works best for you. I've also seen individuals have like their personal website or like an online website. And if you are planning to showcase this work on your resume, I would recommend putting it at the top of your resume. Sometimes at the very end, I've seen it and I just overlook it. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you both. I think that sometimes the best opportunities come when you're least expecting it. So having all of those online platforms pre-prepared is certainly helpful. What tactics do you recommend for job seekers with target companies and target roles? Andrea, we'll start with you.
I think if you have a list of companies already, go ahead and research them online and engage with them on their social media platforms. That could be following them on LinkedIn or any of their other social media platforms, responding back to a post that they have posted online. That way, you have a greater way of making yourself stand out. If you're creating a new target list or company, research them online and find out what their competitors are. Sometimes they have similar tools or technologies, similar goals and values, and they tend to hire amongst each other. So
yeah, that's really helpful, Andrea. Another thing that comes to mind is leveraging recruiters. We have relationships that are already established, and communicating your target companies might be a natural in for you. We oftentimes have at least some type of association with larger organizations, and being able to vouch for you in your search is going to only be helpful. And if we can't access them for you, we can send you back to their application process and help make an intro where we can. And then another way to leverage networking is leveraging relationships that already exist in your life. Going and having conversations about your job search with maybe someone that you wouldn't necessarily talk to that about might be a natural intro into a company that you didn't even know was hiring for your skill set. So keeping a broad mind about how your network can work for you by just simply having conversations. It is not taboo to email and message, especially on LinkedIn, and using that to your advantage is only going to put you a step ahead of people who are just putting in an application online.
Absolutely. That extra step definitely is noticed, especially when there's a lot of applicants. And how should a job seeker evaluate their career goals and values? Do you have any recommendation and steps in doing so? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So actually just this week, someone that I previously worked with, I saw him comment on a LinkedIn post, and his advice was really, really interesting. He recommended that one of the things you can do to evaluate your goals and making sure that your journey makes sense for your overall alignment and what you want in your career is to have a conversation with someone who's already in the seat that you think might be a fit for you. Getting to know their ins and outs of their day-to-day position is going to help you make a better informed decision with your own ideas of what your goals should be. So again, leveraging conversations, with the way the world works socially these days, just continue to engage people directly and get answers about things you might be unsure about with your goals.
I agree with Danielle on this one. Working with someone that's already in the position that you aspire to become is such excellent advice. I was looking for online resources and noticed that, there's several resources up there on Google that you can just do self-assessments to find out what kind of goals or roles align with what you're looking for, or interests that you have. And then they can provide like a career roadmap, like you said.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have a question from one of our viewers. Audra is asking, how can someone get a recruiter to help look for a job? So someone that's not working with a recruiter, how would they go about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So I know we keep pointing us back to LinkedIn, but it really is a professional network that works for everyone. What comes to mind is simply sending a message. A lot of us have that title, and so making sure we're the right point of contact and just sending a message. One of the things when approaching a recruiter to remember is there are lots of people that reach out. So make sure that when you are communicating to us that your message is clear. Always include your resume. We're going to ask for it, so just get ahead of that. And then be specific on what you're targeting. As you probably know, recruiters we typically have specialties. And so I would do your research on making sure we're the right recruiter to reach out to. I'm an accounting and finance recruiter. I do work in spaces outside of that, but that's where I spend most of my time. So align your conversations with recruiters that make sense for your search.
Awesome. And how should a job seeker be networking and optimizing their personal networks? Andrea, we'll start with you.
I think a great way to expand your brand, especially on LinkedIn, is once you engage with an individual, just be able to go on LinkedIn, find them, and connect with them. I didn't notice this recently, but if you connect with just a variety of individuals, you want to be careful. LinkedIn will give you a warning if too many people reject your connections. So I think if you are planning to connect with individuals on LinkedIn, have an intention in mind and write that in the message. And like Danielle mentioned, be very clear with how you are making that connection, that message.
That's helpful. I know I touched on this in a previous question, but leveraging your network personally. So, of course, all of our minds go to digital. We have relationships outside of the online space that can leverage our job search. Another thing that comes to mind, and we do this as recruiters, if we've placed someone successfully somewhere and the client comes back and says, we need another of this person, we go to their LinkedIn and look at their network. Who has a similar background as them? So the way that you as a job seeker can leverage that resource. So if you're looking at your LinkedIn, at the top of it, it's going to tell you who your mutual connections are. Go to that person, look at their mutual connections. If someone makes sense to have a conversation with about your job search, leverage that like connection and have them make an intro for you if it makes sense. Sometimes what LinkedIn can do for us isn't just obvious. Do a little digging, look at your connections, and have intros made for you where you can.
Awesome. And it looks like we have another question from one of our viewers. Are candidates still being penalized for having a gap in between jobs?
I love this
Do
question.
you want to take it?
Go ahead, Andrew. You can go first.
I don't think it's that much of a penalization as before, because we all have situations that we're just not aware that's going to happen, but be comfortable sharing that in the interview process, because it will come up. We just want to get to know a little bit more about you and what happened. You don't have to go too much into detail, but just being able to just share that information could help the recruiter understand a little bit more about, what they're seeing on the resume.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think since COVID, employers have become much more understanding with gaps. I think so many people during the pandemic changed their priorities in life. And so gaps and having breaks, taking time for family is understood. Like you said, Andrea, I think it's important that you have a concise message on why the gap is there. And I oftentimes work with candidates on how best to communicate that in an interview. Sometimes when we start talking about personal stuff, we can ramble, but it's important to fine tune how you communicate what was going on during the gap.
Thank you both. And I think it's just another reason too, if you're nervous and you haven't had that conversation yet, this is the perfect time to utilize a recruiter to advocate for you and, teach you how to have that conversation. Our last question, what tools and technologies do you recommend for job seekers? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. The first is Indeed. Depending on the industry and field that you're in, different resources are going to be more popular. I leverage Indeed heavily. LinkedIn is another resource that we pull applicants from. And then secondly, I want to comment specifically on job application processes. So oftentimes when you're going to a website and they're asking you to fill all of that information in and you're over it because this is the fifth one you've done today, it is really helpful on the backside. I know it's tedious, but it pulls you into our system in a way that captures all of your information that a resume can't translate over naturally. And so really utilizing, as I mentioned earlier, 2 applications. So if you're applying on Indeed and you have the mental capacity to go put in all of your information again on the company's website, I highly recommend it. You can't ever gauge which resource that recruiter or hiring manager is going to see your resume first.
I agree on that 100%. Sometimes our application tracking system will pull from the resume and just because of how the resume is formatted, maybe it's in Word format or PDF, but when it's converted over to simple text, it's just, it picks up different things and enters it in different fields for us. So, take the extra step to enter the information into the system. Some of the job boards that I use heavily on the IT side would be clearance jobs because we work on clearable positions. And Indeed is a great one too. It allows the candidate to ask the recruiter if a recruiter wants to message a candidate, they will have to get their permission before revealing their contact information. So if you don't, if that's information you don't want to share up front, you can have that. And then DICE is another great job board for IT specific positions. In regards to tools, I really like Grammarly. I've used it for such a long time, and they keep updating their tool that you can just integrate it to different platforms. Like on Chrome, you can use it as an extension. You can download it into your MS Suite. So while you're, compiling a professional email or developing a cover letter, resume, you can use it there within your MS Suite. And then I've noticed that you can use it for text messages too. So if you're on travel, if you're traveling, you can also have Grammarly with you there.
I love Grammarly. It's a great tool. I also think utilizing ChatGPT is really helpful. There are 2 versions. You should always make sure that what you are receiving from ChatGPT is up to date. However, you can research companies, you can research roles, and you can even practice interviewing back and forth and get feedback from ChatGPT. So again, it's not something you should solely rely on. However, it can be a really helpful tool, especially when getting ready for those interviews and researching those companies. We're out of time for today, but thank you so much to our panel, and thank you to everyone that commented. Don't forget to follow System 1 on LinkedIn. We're going to have some really useful content on a successful job search roadmap, so be sure to look out for that. By following us, you will automatically be entered into our contest giveaway to win the Oculus Quest 2, and also subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you tune in to the next Sound Off. We have one every first and third Friday at 2 p.m. Our next Sound Off will be Friday, October 20th at 2, and we'll be discussing networking in the digital age and how to build strong connections on LinkedIn. We'll see you then.